Hey everyone, welcome back to a new video. I hope you had a great day. Let's take a look at some new malicious compliance stories where people conform to the letter, but not the spirit of a request. The first story is called Follow Her Schedule Then. I used to be an intern at a bank while I was pursuing my diploma. On paper, the working hours were supposedly your typical 9 AM to 6 PM. But people usually either came late and stayed late or came early and stayed late. There was a colleague of mine, Denise, who had to come all the way from Malaysia every morning just to get to work in Singapore. There was an unofficial agreement with her boss that she was allowed to enter the office at any time, since she was never sure what time she could reach her workplace depending on traffic. This was fine, since she usually reached at 12 PM and stayed until at least 8 PM, just like everyone else, and staying past 11 PM was the norm here. Just like most people, her day can start without a cup of coffee, and she would get one no matter what time she reached. No one had any issue with her coming in late at all until another intern came. Let's call the intern Jane. Now Jane was the kind of person who hated coming to work early and loved to go home the moment the hand on the clock hit 6. Honestly, so do we, but we don't do it. She loved to gossip with her other colleagues and friends, as well as getting to work at 10 AM without any valid reason. Other colleagues had already submitted multiple complaints regarding her coming to work late, and her manager was already mad and sent Jane an email. She was not to come to work late anymore, or her internship would be considered null and void, along with a mention to her supervisor that she would fail that semester as our internship was graded. All of us were in our team's meeting when she received that email, which led to her outburst. "Manager, why can Denise come to work late, but I can't? Just because she's a full-time employee doesn't mean she doesn't have to follow the rules." "Alright, in that case you get to follow her work schedule then." "Okay, sure." At this point, all of us were amused but horrified by what that entailed. As interns, we had to send a morning report to our school from our work email at 11 AM sharp in the morning with no exceptions. Imagine her surprise when she remembered this the next day. She even took a taxi down to rush her report and tried to leave work at 6 PM, but was reminded by the manager she could only leave at 11 PM. It didn't take too long for her to realize that when the manager said to follow her, Denise's work schedule, she meant the staying late part as well. This meant that Jane had to report to work from 10:45 AM and could only leave when Denise does, at 11 PM. I will never forget her face when she panicked and tried to call up our manager, but was denied resuming her previous working hours as per the verbal agreement which everyone heard the day before. This continued for roughly a week, with Jane looking warier and warier as time went by, from coming in an hour later but only being allowed to leave work 5 hours later. Thankfully, she apologized by then, and our manager was nice enough to let her resume with the actual working hours. Throughout the rest of my time there as an intern, she was always punctual and even worked late sometimes. I left before Jane did, and she did eventually become a better person, didn't gossip as much anymore, and was a lot more well-mannered. We added each other on Instagram and still keep in touch. The next story is called Don't Put It Away Until I Tell You To. I worked for a small independent greengrocer. They had a boom of business during the first lockdown and so brought me on to help deal with orders, organizing their website and general admin. I'm the sort of person who likes to get stuck into things wherever I work. And so slowly I started doing bits that were not really my job description but helped other staff out. One of these roles was to put stock away and rotate it in the fridges. Every morning we would get a delivery of fresh food and veg. I'm talking about 6 pallets worth of stuff. I would have to go through it, take it to the correct fridge and basically put it behind the older stuff so that shelves were being stocked with the oldest produce first. Now the manager of the company liked to think he knew exactly what was going to sell every day and would frequently overbuy certain products. This meant that in order to fit everything in, I sometimes had to reorganize where things went. To clarify, the fridge was small. You walked in and could move in an L shape while seeing all produce pretty much at all times. There was nowhere that couldn't be seen if you moved further into the fridge and simply looked. Because of the overbuying, a lot of produce was stuck in the fridge for days and days and resulted in it going bad. What didn't help was that the manager decided any orders that came in would not get picked from what was in the fridge, it would be picked from the pallets. So we had very little stock movement coming out of the fridge, but loads of produce going in. One Monday morning I come in to find 3 pallets worth of rotting produce that the manager had taken out of the fridge on Saturday and left to sit in the yard behind the shop for me to see. He claimed that I had been hiding the produce, so the shop assistants were not able to stock the shelves with the older produce, and this resulted in a lot of waste. I took a quick look at the stuff, and as expected, it was the products that had been overbought. I tried to say as nicely as possible that there was no way I could have hidden it, and the reason a lot of it was wasted is that we had too much to begin with. But the manager could never be wrong, so he told me from now on not to put any stock away unless he approved it. So on the next day I come in and it's a scorcher. Very hot for the UK, one of the hottest of the year. I see the stock set outside on pallets and can even see some of it sweating already, despite only being out about 15 minutes before I arrived. Normally I would get straight on it and start putting it away, but I had not been asked to yet, so I went up to the office and got on with some admin. Turns out the manager had an appointment that day until around lunchtime, approximately 5 hours after I arrived. He turned up to find 5 pallets of produce, around 4k in value, all nicely baking in the sun. The smell was not great. All soft fruits, berries mostly, had to be thrown immediately. And based on how warm most of it was, only the stuff that had been placed lower down and in the center of the pallets was even viable to save. The manager called me into his office and found the owner of the company, so I could explain why we had lost so much produce that day. And you know what? I did just that. My conversation with the owner was short and sweet, and I had no negative consequences come from it. The manager was given a warning, which, as he had been pulled up for other issues previously, was a written warning and put him closer to being let go. He stayed another 6 weeks before deciding this wasn't the job for him. As for putting the produce away, when I came in the next day I didn't even ask, I just got on with it as normal. The last story is called I Don't Want a Chick to Work on My Car. Many years ago I worked at a car dealership. The attached service garage was small and I was the only licensed mechanic. I would occasionally have issues with male customers. They would second guess my diagnosis, watch me while I worked on their cars from the bay door, double check my work in the parking lot, etc. I didn't deal with customers directly and would often get my apprentice to pull cars in and out of the shop for me. This morning in particular we were busy. The lot jockey and apprentice were occupied helping wash cars for delivery and driving to our customer's house. The service advisor left our work order and keys at the parts counter, and I went out to the front through service to get the car. It was in for a service campaign, which was an update done with a scan tool. It takes about 10 minutes. The customer was planning on waiting and was sitting in service. When he saw me with his keys in my hand, he immediately stood up, alarmed. I was hustling, so I walked right by him and out the door. I missed the following conversation, according to the service advisor, also female. Who is that chick? Is she going to be working on my car? I don't want her working on my car. The other tag is out at the moment, so it's going to be quite a wait until someone else can look at your car. That's fine, I'll wait for a guy. I don't want that chick touching my car. The advisor comes to let me know, and I pull the car out and put the work orders and keys back on the counter, nonplussed. Half an hour passes. The apprentice is still away, and I'm happily working on something else, bringing other cars in and out. The customer is now watching each and every person who comes through the door. The high school co-op student comes in to get something signed. The customer's key are still sitting on the desk. It's been about an hour now. Hey, why hasn't my car gone in yet? Can you get this guy to do it? No, sorry, he's just a co-op student, so he's not allowed to drive the cars due to liability and insurance concerns. Just get someone else to bring the car in and he can do the work. This was supposed to take 10 minutes. Sorry sir, he's just a high school student doing his co-op. He's not approved to perform warranty work. Only licensed techs and apprentices can do the recall. The car jockey returns. The advisor hands the car jockey a different set of keys and he brings yet another car into the shop for me. The customer is becoming incensed. My appointment was for 8 AM. This is getting ridiculous, blah blah blah. At this point he says that he literally doesn't care who does the recall, but it has to be a guy. The service advisor starts listing off the names of the men who work in the dealership, then saying why they can't perform the recall. Well, there's someone, but he's just a car jockey. He doesn't know how to work on cars. Then there's Jeet, but he's about 17. I wouldn't want him doing the recall personally. I guess we could ask Mike, but Mike is the parts guy. He doesn't know how to use the scan tool. The detailers are men, but they know nothing about cars. The customer is fuming at this point and demands to talk to the service manager. The manager comes out of his office and guides the customer into the garage. He's pretty old school, lights up a cigarette, standing at the end of my bay and points at me. That's my best technician. Those guys take orders from her. You can either wait for her to finish what she's working on and then you can ask if she's still willing to do your work. Or you can take your car somewhere else. The guy was pretty shook up at this point and he took his car and left 2 hours after he'd first arrived. I don't think we ever saw him again, which was not much of a loss, all things considered. That manager in particular always stuck up for me and took my side. The service advisor has this very deadpan sense of humor. She knew full well it would easily be an hour before the apprentice would return from his errand, and that no one else could do that recall. And now it's your time to shine. Let me know what you think about the stories. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the stories? I hope you enjoyed today's video. And I hope you have a great day. Stay safe. Bye bye.